Hello, listeners, and welcome to A Geek Tragedy. I am Stephen, known online as Plague Mantle for various reasons, and I am your host. And I would like to welcome to the most erudite human and my best friend, Holly Properly. Hello, Holly. How are you?
Hello, I'm very well, thank you. I have nothing further to add.
Not even a cat?
No, I don't know where he's gone.
Oh, disappointing.
Yeah, sad.
Fair enough then, and of course our very own salvage man and crafter par excellence, Mr. Mark Gaudry. Hello, Mark. How are you?
Good evening, Stephen. I am fine, thank you very much. Life is
Excellent.
Good, although somewhat wet. Down here in
Yes.
Cornwall.
Glad you changed out of that jumper, I imagine. You looked rather warm.
Somewhat soggy.
And hidden behind the scenes, our producer and long-suffering Kit, who shall be named various insert pronoun Kits.
Airfix, cross stitch, Aurora, best.
Drum. That's my one, isn't it? Drum.
Yeah.
And
Biss.
Biss.
Who? Kit Biss?
Biscuit.
Biscuit. Okay, there you go, yeah. That's a new one.
Oh, I love that.
Who is probably now grumpy.
Probably, yep.
And last, but by no means last, is Plagway Mantel himself. Stephen, how are you?
Plage Mantel.
We established this in an earlier episode. It's Plagway.
Plagway Mantley. Yeah, I'm all right. I've got new glasses. Look.
Nice.
Ooh, very smooth.
Very, very.
And we agreed we were going to wear
Classy.
Halloweeny costumes for today, so I'm wearing this jacket.
I'm dressed as the 1990s.
And I have nothing. Well, not literally nothing. I just have my civvies. For those listening, take that mental image out of your head and throw it away.
Well, actually, technically speaking, in time order of release of recorded pods, this is the first time anyone would have seen you clean shaven. So technically speaking, you're not wearing a beard.
No, so I'm starting to grow it back. I was just annoying.
Yeah.
Have you decided to go back to the...
Yeah, so I've got a light fluff, a little downy stubble at the moment, which give it time.
See, if you don't watch this and listen to it, usually Mark has a beard which scrapes his knees.
Yeah.
I don't. It's
Dumbledore
designer
style.
stubble at best.
Today it's a kind of...
It was the first time that we've seen Mark's chin in years.
Magnificent, isn't it?
Very much.
And in profile.
Ooh. Ooh.
Outstanding.
Yes, it is. Literally.
So this is a pod about beards and shaving now. That's a big geek that we do. No, apparently we've now managed to make it, by the way, to 19 episodes.
Go us.
Which means that we've been doing this for 9 months. By the end of the Halloween period, we would have done 6 months of podding with the new pod.
Wow.
Well, we've beaten our previous record then.
I think so. I don't know when we did last one.
remember.
But it does mean that we've done all of spring, summer, spring, and all of summer, and we have somehow stumbled into autumn.
Autumn.
As you can tell by the fact that it's freezing cold and really wet.
And
Is it cold in Cornwall?
It's not cold, but it is very, very wet and very, very windy. So it's making up for the lack of cold with the other things.
It's very wet and very windy here.
We have the benefit of the Isle of Wight at this part of the south coast, which kind of acts as an excellent buffer between us and bad weather.
Yeah. No, it's not doing its bloody job at the moment, is it?
I say it could be worse, I presume. But yes, it does mean that we've made it all the way to October, or Halloween season, or Spooptober, or sometimes, as we call it, Margret, which means, that's what the Romans used to call it, Margret.
The Romans used to call September...
No, specifically Spooptober.
Spooptober.
Yeah.
Margret.
Yeah, there you go. That's a true fact.
It's not, though, is it? You've made that up for a laugh.
I mean, in all fairness, Holly, you've got a rubber spanner called Maud, so, I mean...
I do.
It's not beyond the realms of possibility.
I think you'll find she's a rent, actually.
She's whatever you want her to be.
As I said earlier, we have somehow stumbled into autumn. In our usual style. So, because it's Margret, we're going to try to tackle the various topics that get thrown up at this time of year. You're right, Holly.
Holly's broken already. We've got to get a new Holly. She breaks very easily.
My grandmother's name is Margaret.
Your grandmother's named after Spooktober? I didn't know that.
That's all that's in my head.
You're gonna think of that next time you speak to her.
Oh, I bloody hope not.
So we've all got some special interests in the topics that float around right now. So for the next 4 episodes, we're going to tackle specific facts and knowledge and our own experiences of Samhain, or as it is pronounced in American TV shows, Samhain. How it's changed for the eons, what's going on now, and if we're lucky, we're going to get some conversations out of folk from other countries, because during our travels, we've met people from places like Wales, Scotland, Cornwall, and come to know them well. And they have very different traditions from, that's not true, Germany, America. We've got some people that we want to go and chat to, not physically leave the country. Oh, that'd be nice, though.
We should do that.
We need more Patreons.
We need more Patreons.
Yeah,
so splash the cash so that we can swan off around the world interviewing celebrities.
Usually we don't do like a call to action until the end of the pod, but right now we're going to do it here in the introduction. The call to action, Patronus. You can listen to Mark talk about crafting things, Holly talk about books, and me talk about board games and role-playing games and my experiences as working in a brothel.
Behind a curry house.
Behind a curry house. Yeah. Anyway, so we're going to have some folks around the world, and we're going to talk to them about what it's like in other countries. And at the very end of this sequence, we get to talk to someone who I've been waiting to speak to all my life, and an excellent terror-filled special guest. But we won't tell you who it is.
Oh.
I mean, I've posted about it on Instagram already, but I'm not going to tell you who it is.
Terror-filled? That was the nicest conversation I've ever had.
Shh. He was terrified.
I don't think he was.
Of us. Anyway, Margret, let's go. So, obviously Halloween has changed over the last years, because as we just mentioned, Samhain happened quite some time ago. We all know, of course, Samhain because we watched the Supernatural television series, and it occurred in one of those, which is how we know it's called Samhain, really.
Rather than Dean Hain.
Dean Hain. Or Sam Dean, surely that should be called.
Sam Dean. That's the kind of holiday I could really get behind.
I see.
Calm yourself, Holly.
But obviously, Samhain was a festival which commemorated the end of the harvest season and the blurring of the physical and spiritual worlds. Halloween's forebears. And during that summer year, hearth fires in family homes left to burn out while the harvests were gathered. After the harvest work was complete, celebrants joined with druid priests to light massive bonfires and pray, much like we do at home every year now. Mark, Holly, and I gathered together and we watch the fires dwindle, and then we go out to harvest the gnomes that live on the porch and bring them inside. And then we gather with the next door neighbours and pray whilst burning massive fires made of wigs.
You got a bit lost halfway through that, didn't you?
Because we, like the ancient Celts, believe that the barrier between the physical world and the spirit worlds were breachable during Samhain, or Samhain as it's rightly called. It was expected that ancestors might cross over during this time as well, and our ancestors would dress as aminals and monsters so that fairies were not tempted to kidnap them. What would you dress as, Mark, if you had to prevent fairies from kidnapping you?
Fairies from kidnapping me?
Yes, particularly fairies. What would you dress as?
I would. Well, you'd have to dress as Cold Iron, wouldn't you?
Dress as Cold Iron.
Yeah, just dress
walk
as
around
a
like
big
a
lump of
crowbar.
Cold Iron, because
So
apparently
basically
that's what fairies don't like, isn't it?
Swallow a shit ton of magnets and see what sticks to you. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe. I'm covered in spoons. You cannot touch me, fair folk.
Okay, Holly. If you were trying to scare away the fairies and Mark had already hoovered up all of the cutlery, what would you dress as?
Why would I want to scare away the fairies?
Good question.
Like,
But if you had to.
If I had to, maybe it's difficult because I mean Cold Iron's actually it's good. But if you said though that they would dress as animals and monsters so that fairies wouldn't try to kidnap them, right?
Yes.
So like animals,
Animals that fairies have no use for, like bears or
Badgers.
poodles.
I wouldn't want to dress up as a poodle. Could I dress up as a hobbit?
Well, yes, I suppose so. They are technically, if you're orcs, they're monsters.
Yes. Or I could dress. Or I could dress as a. Could maybe Granny Weatherwax.
You dress up as Granny. So Granny Weatherwax and a pint of spoons to drive off the fairies.
See the combo. I think we could make a real dynamic duo there.
What about you, Stephen? Though.
What would I dress up as?
Yeah.
I'd dress up as some other fairies. Because, they wouldn't want to kidnap me, would they? I'm just one of them. I think I'd go off with them anyway.
You'd be away with the fairies anyway.
Yeah. It'd be grand. And I hadn't been kidnapped at that point. So I could leave whenever I wanted to. There you go. And if you're listening to this, obviously you are listening to this because you can hear me and you've just heard the words if you're listening to this, which makes no sense. But feel free to email us with what you would dress as if you were trying to not be kidnapped by fairies. Maybe, it's unlikely, but maybe we'll give out a prize for our favourite answer. Probably not, though. It's hard to say.
Be
We're that desperate for content already.
No, it just popped into my front.
Okay.
I was hoping we could send them a spoon and claim they had been stuck to you at some point.
Could you
guess
sign
where
it
this
with
spoon has been?
I don't want to play that game. I really don't want to play that game.
Anyway, later on, the Catholic Church established November the 1st as All Saints' Day, a day commemorating all the saints of the Church. By the 9th century, the influence of Christianity had spread into the lands of the Druids, where it gradually blended with and supplanted the older rites. So we could carry on questioning, go like, so which ancient rites would you like to have supplanted, Holly? But we won't go down that road. That'd be a bit strange.
I can tell you, I can tell you a story about saints though, from back in the day when I was a Catholic.
When you were a Catholic.
When I was a Catholic, yeah. So, if you didn't know, gentle listeners, when I was 12, I decided that the best thing I could possibly do in my entire life was convert to Catholicism, and they let me. Like,
who was they? Your parents?
Well, I mean,
the Catholic Church,
the Catholic Church, my teachers, my parents. I went to a very
everyone, the whole world.
Everyone. No one. Everyone just went, sure, you can do that. So I did that, and one of the big things that you do when you're coming up to your confirmation, which you do when you're about 13, and it confirms your place in the Catholic Church amongst the blessed and the saved, is to take a saint's name. So for about 6 weeks leading up to confirmation, we all had to take confirmation classes at school. And everyone was like, that was the only topic of conversation, was what your new name was going to be. And I couldn't pick because they just, there are so many saints in the Catholic Church and you could only pick one. And I'm terribly indecisive anyway. And you had things like people were taking like their brother, like if they were named after saints already and their siblings were named after saints, they just swapped names with their siblings. Everything was getting a little bit chaotic. And in the end, I just couldn't pick. So I basically just like rifled through a book of saints and stopped on a page to see where I was. And I got Monica, who is the patron saint of mothers. There you go.
Oh.
So it's part of my actual name now, I think. But yeah.
Which bit is the O from Holly? The part of it is that from the O from Monica?
No, as in like it just goes in the middle.
In the Monica
middle
slot.
Of Holly.
No, in the middle of my name.
Harmonically. Oh, you're a harmonica.
Oddly enough, my middle name is Chandler, but there you go.
Bing!
Ta-dang!
So yes, there you go. Saints. Yeah.
And harmonically. I love that. That's a great name. And what you should be known as from now on.
Absolutely not.
Harmonically. Fuck. It sounds like something you do to milk.
What? No, it doesn't.
Isn't that homogenizing?
Oh, yes, you're right. It is.
I think you mean it. Okay.
Anyway.
Right.
Moving on from Harmonically's excellent story about saints and new names. So yeah, that was the All Saints' Day. It was also called All Hallows or All Hallow Mass, or Margaret, and that was the night before was called that. And the traditional night of Samhain began to be called All Hallowed Eves, All Hallows Eve, eventually Halloween or Margaret. So you had All Saints Day, All Souls Day, and Samhain all became one big day. And rather than call it All Saints Day or All Saints or Samhain, they went for Halloween because that's an amalgamation of all the letters of those words.
No, it's not.
Oh, I can't see why else they call it that.
A lot of the same letters.
It's a contraction, right? So like the traditional spelling of Halloween has an apostrophe in it because it's a contraction of All Hallows Eve. So it's E''EN at the end, or at least it should be, but that doesn't happen anymore because it's just very slowly lost the apostrophe over time.
I still do it.
I still do it. I won a pub quiz once because I put an apostrophe in Halloween and nobody else did. My prize was a shot of Cactus Jacks.
Okay. In a glass, hopefully.
It was a plastic shot
In the
glass.
arm.
It was not a very sanitary pub.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's obviously got to be a really classy pub if you can win a quiz by putting an apostrophe in a word. That's pretty high stakes quizzing going on right there.
Yeah.
Moving on. In the Middle Ages, very rich people would then murder their relatives and make poor people come round to their house and give them food.
No, they made soul cakes.
Yeah, but like basically, because wealthy people couldn't be asked to pray for the dead relatives, they would force poor people to come out of their homes, round to their homes, where they would give them soul cakes, and then go, "We'll only give you these cakes if you pray for our dead brethren, not your own, only for our dead." And that is how poor people got soul cakes.
Yeah, well, that's Catholicism for you, isn't it?
So far, so scary.
And that was where trick and treating came from.
It's better now though because you can get candy corn, and I think I'm the only person in the whole world that likes candy corn.
I don't even know what it is.
Well, my favourite bit is like the children of the olden times were much after my own heart. I was doing a bit of reading. The most common thing that they would go around for, they would knock for free things at doors. They wouldn't ask for sweets or trick or treats. They would ask, "Can we have some food?" And if they went, "No, fuck off," they go, "Well, can we have some money then?" And they said, "No, fuck off." They were forced to then give them ale. So yeah, it was grand. If you were a kid, you basically just got like completely wankered on All Hallows Eve.
We should do that this year. Go down really well in town, I think.
It probably would, but you'd have to give everyone at home scripts and go, "When I come round trick and treating, I don't want sweets." Okay,
no, I just think the kids that come to my house trick or treating.
Give kids ale.
Here we are. Here's a shot of tequila.
That's not legal,
isn't it?
I'm pretty sure it's
well,
not.
When I was trick or treating a couple of years ago at Bill, when we went past the corner shop, who at some point I can't remember why, I went into the corner shop years ago, and they had no change. I mean, I've got loads of change at home, so I went home, got them change, and gave them change, and got changed up some money. And when I was going past that year for Halloween, they came out and they gave the kids sweets because they did that, and they saw me and were like, "Oh, it's you!" And they went inside and gave me a bottle of wine, which I thought was very nice.
That's the best possible outcome.
Yes, it is. It is. There you go. So kids got drunk, and they were also dressed in costumes made out of animal skin or straw called skecklers, which I think is where Skeksis come from.
And probably Kex.
No, don't be ridiculous. Skeksis is more likely. They're not real.
Well, yeah, but like if you follow the etymology of that, like dressing up in a thing. I'm going to look this up now. If you just give me a minute, everybody. Talk amongst yourselves.
If everybody would like to pause the episode right now, Holly will be right back to you. Meanwhile, here's some holding music.
Anyway, while we're doing that, as well as listening to this music that Mark is providing, obviously jack-o'-lanterns turned up, and they come from the famous story of Stingy Jack, which we all know.
I don't know the story of Stingy Jack. I was wrong. It's not where Kex comes from at all.
Sad.
Kex comes from the obsolete term kicks breeches from the 19th century.
Stingy Jack tricked the devil and was forced to wander around the world, or at least Ireland, with a lump of burning coal and a turnip to light his way.
Like Baldric.
No, I don't think anyone put burning coal inside Baldric and used him to light the way, did they?
It's just anytime anyone mentions anything about turnips, all I can think of is Baldric.
It would have been a cunning plan.
It would have been, yeah.
Fair enough. And after that, people used to carve pumpkins and stick lanterns, lights in them to scare away Stingy Jack and other wandering evil spirits.
Why did
And I'm
pumpkins,
sure
as the expert, where did pumpkins come from? When did they get introduced? Was pumpkins Americas?
No, carving faces in vegetables was like
No, specifically pumpkins, though.
specifically pumpkins.
Yeah. Are they an America's vegetable? Go on, Holly. Go and research it.
Do we not have pumpkins?
No, because we had it was root it was root vegetables.
No, but do we not have pumpkins?
For
I
ages.
don't know.
I don't know.
No, we
I
have
don't know
pumpkins.
Either. We do now, but I don't know whether we did then.
No, of course we do. The Americans don't get everything good.
Well, they gave us potatoes.
No, they didn't. Well, I know they did.
Potatoes from the Americas. They did.
Well, they're from South America.
From the Shire, didn't we?
Still the Americas. I said the Americas, plural.
I could have sworn it was the Shire.
I was the Shire. Right, okay. So when did pumpkin spice lattes come out?
Oh, dear.
When did pumpkins became associated with Halloween when Irish immigrants brought the tradition of carving jack-o'-lanterns to the United States in the 19th century.
Okay, so the tradition went there, but the vegetables were there.
The tradition of carving scary faces into turnips, potatoes, or beetroot to ward off evil spirits. Yeah.
I got a bright red jack-o'-lantern here. It's staining my fingers.
I don't think it was pickled beetroot.
Oh, okay.
No, but it still stains, though.
I know, but now it's funny that they would carve it into like sliced pickled beetroot, tiny faces, and hold them up
next to a tea light.
Ooh.
Yeah, there was Irish immigrants arriving in America because American pumpkins were larger and easier to carve than Irish turnips.
There you go.
There you go.
Yeah, so that's where.
Which I suppose is true because pumpkins are kind of like a natural thing to carve out, aren't they? Because the middle is fleshy, full of seeds. I've done. They don't.
The
smell
Irish
good,
were
though.
fleeing the potato famine, right? That's where most of the immigration came from to America, so they wouldn't have had many potatoes with them.
Well, they weren't carving potatoes; they were carving turnips. But turnips are still harder to carve than a pumpkin, objectively speaking, because they don't have that soft, seedy middle.
Not if you're tenacious.
Take ages. You have to use a pole lathe. I had one of those in my back garden.
Here we go, gentle listener. You're learning so many things.
So Irish immigrants went to America and they started to do. They started doing things back in their homelands, right? Which is this goes on with this, especially pulling pranks. So in the late 1800s, common Halloween tricks included placing farmers' wagons and livestock on barn roofs, uprooting vegetables in backyard gardens, and tipping over outhouses with people in them.
That's just vandalism.
Yeah, that's pretty grim.
That's not like, especially the outhouse one.
How'd you get a cow
Happy
on the
Halloween,
roof?
get covered in shit.
I don't think they shouted Happy Halloween at that point.
All
I have
right,
to say.
fine. But still, either way.
More like, have this fucker. And then, like, when they came around the next day, when you'd, like, tip me over my outhouse, they were like, oh, well, it was a Halloween prank. Not like, I absolutely hate you normally, in everyday life. And I was waiting all the way to Halloween so I could say it was a prank. And now we're going to do it every year, is just tip over outhouses.
Still, how do you get a cow on a roof?
Yeah, how do you get a cow on a barn roof?
Ladder.
Catapult. Ladder? Catapult?
Catapult ladder.
Swing?
Some kind of hoist.
I feel like we should bring this back as a traditional Margret prank.
You reckon?
Yeah.
Cow slinging.
Yeah.
Absolutely
Happy
not.
Margret.
Have a cow.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, that'd be grand.
I have a cow in my attic now and no roof.
It's like in The Witcher when you can get your horse stuck on the roof.
The game we're talking about then.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, unfortunately, this particular course of action by the early 20th century, vandalism, physical assaults, and sporadic acts of violence were not uncommon on Halloween.
Like the Purge.
Yeah, like the Purge. That's where it comes from. It comes from
Purgerine.
Yeah. One of my favourite facts, though, was the starting in the 1800s, Madame Tussauds Wax Museum in London, obviously, for those who don't know, featured a Chamber of Horrors. And their Halloween act for the Chamber of Horrors, do you know what it was?
Go on.
It was Decapitated Frenchmen, because French Revolution.
Mon Dieu! Monte!
Oh, sacré bleu!
Although you wouldn't say that, you just go. Thud, 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 thud.
Hootsman, where's my heed? But that's Scottish.
That's very French. Your French accents come on really well. Très bien.
Wait. So they just stuck a load of decapitated French waxworks in a room and called it a Chamber of Horrors.
Well, I wasn't actually there. I missed that year, but
Oh, right. Okay.
From the one line of notes that I took from what I read, that was my takeaway. This isn't a great fact-finding episode, is it? Really, it's just us talking nonsense about where Halloween came from and claiming it's always been called Margaret.
It is really interesting though, because there are certain things like, so Halloween and kind of, how it progressed into, like from these early stages of basically just vandalism against your neighbors, to like
proper shithousery
the
outhouse thing.
Send it into sort of like sending your kids around the neighborhood to get as much sugar in them as they possibly could on a school night. Like there's a huge gulf there, and the gulf, like I think it's the point where at any point where somebody realizes that something can be commercialized, it starts to it just.
So, gentle listeners, Holly is touching. Sorry, harmonically is touching on the whole point of this little section we're doing. We'll get to the end of it in a minute. We're going to talk about in a minute why and how things have really radically changed, especially like the acceleration towards the end of the 20th century as we really kind of started to celebrate Halloween in a completely different way. Because in 1915, in Britain, an amusement ride manufacturer created an early haunted house complete with dim lights, shaking floors, and demonic screams. I don't know where they got the demonic screams from, but maybe they were there when they built it.
Maybe.
And the Great Depression kickstarted a really big trend because the violence of that particular period meant that Halloween atrocities reached new heights. And to keep their kids off the streets and stop them setting fire to houses, stabbing people, and so on and so forth, parents just started like organizing haunted house trails,
corn mazes.
Yeah,
that's a really
just
big
to make
thing,
sure they
isn't it?
weren't actually just going out and committing violence against people.
Wow.
Yeah, some ingenuity there from the parents, I think.
Well, yeah, I mean, it would be nice probably if they hadn't had to have done that in the first place. But we can blame everybody in the 1800s and their,
No, I don't think you can slander people in the 1800s, can you? You can call them anything.
No. Yeah. No, it is. It's because, like, when you think about the fact that it basically started out as a ward against evil, and you have this progression of people sort of, like warding themselves against things that they, that were part of their folklore and part of their mythology.
Mm-hmm.
And it very obviously sort of coincides like with the changing of the seasons, and it's when things start getting darker and nights start drawing in, and everyone's sort of starting to wrap up a bit warmer, and everything, all of nature is about to die. The fact that we now, as a global nation of people, have taken this protective, protective warding rituals of our ancestors and turned them into
kicking over
outhouses, and turned them into cozy Spooptober. It's
costumes are next, right?
Yeah.
So like the things that I mentioned earlier that we were wearing, which were kind of information kindly provided by Kip, by the way, the skecklers. We started to move away from putting dead animals on our heads, and sort of actually getting into costumes in the 1950s. They were more like kind of Batman and Frankenstein kind of times. And that was the beginning, I think, of the acceleration towards, kind of what we expect now. Because back then, people were making their own costumes, but in the 1950s, obviously, you got the mass-produced costumes because you had the Mummy or clowns or, like princesses, princes, whatever Disney was throwing out at the time and that kind of thing. And then, we start moving towards the 80s, and that's kind of where we'll leave that from there, because we'll start talking about the modern phenomenon, because all that history of, as you say, moving away from the moment between which life and death merge, being on All Hallows Eve, and those were the beliefs, and that we could talk to our, commune with the dead. And hopefully, when we talk to people from other countries, we'll get a chance to talk to them about why it's important to them for the same reasons. And then it's now become something that involves dressing up as Superman or whatever.
Well, it goes so much further back than that, right? So there is, like, in anthropology, there are things that are called cultural universalities, right? Humor is a cultural universality. Every single culture on the planet has things that they find humorous, whether that's puns or farts or like any.
This is the whole why do we laugh conversation we're having the other day.
Yeah, exactly. It's a cultural universality, and there are a few of them, but death ritual, death rites, and kind of that sort of phenomenon is one of them. And unless you're a cultural relativist, but that's not
Mark
a
is.
branch of anthropology that I particularly subscribe to. There are the three biggest, like, universal cultural universalities are religion, or like a structure, or basically like a belief structure or a cosmology. And as part of that, basically every single culture that exists has its own take on a creation story, right? So, like, there is always something vaguely kind of supernatural and built into, like, that cosmology and into that belief structure. And because you've got that as your creation story, because you've got a creation story, because you've got something that ties your being in with something bigger than you, it allows for that kind of belief in the supernatural to pervade through your other belief structures, including another cultural universality, which is death ritual. Every single culture has a ritual that they perform on somebody's death. Now, over time, these have become homogenized, because not like milk, because I think you might have meant pasteurized, but
You can have homogenized milk.
anyway. Okay. Like, as globalization has occurred and the major religions have kind of swept through and subsumed a lot of the individual, like, fringe belief systems, you find fewer
Fringe belief systems.
fringe belief systems. You find
Isn't that a festival up in Edinburgh?
yeah, it's
I
on
believe it is.
Halloween.
We should start that if it isn't.
What, fringe belief systems?
Fringe Belief Systems Festival.
Well, sure. But it does things
God,
like
there's
it
going to be so many
subsumes.
tinfoil hats at that, aren't there?
So that you get things, like your death rituals and your beliefs surrounding death become very similar to the people that are around you, as globalization continues to sweep through and knock out smaller belief systems, smaller cosmologies, smaller rituals. And that's what's happened with Halloween overall, is that every single culture has rituals around death, around supernatural, around the things that they can't explain. But as Halloween has become bigger and bigger and bigger, it's subsumed a lot of those, which is why you see things like candy skulls, and like Day of the Dead faces at Halloween. It's got nothing to do, it's got naff all to do with Halloween. It's a completely different ritual, completely different cosmology. But Halloween has basically done what Christianity did to religion and subsumed the whole thing. And
But
it's really
capitalism has done
fascinating. Well, yes, but I mean, capitalism Halloween under capitalism, I suppose. But
it's been monetized.
Yeah.
So we can sell things like costumes and candy skulls and more candy.
And to round off the end point, which is that Holly has made the total point for the end of the pod.
I'm so
made
sorry.
that like halfway through the pod, which is exciting. As I said, Frankenstein masks. That's where we were, Frankenstein costumes. But yeah, that's kind of that is exactly we have to cut that bit out and put it on the end. Because that's the moral of the show.
That's I just wanted to go in on cultural relativists because I think they're wrong.
Mark's a cultural relativist.
No, he's not.
I have no
Mark
idea.
doesn't know what cultural relativism is.
Thick as shit, me.
I don't think not knowing a relatively obscure branch of anthropology, of anthropological theory, makes you thick as shit.
It's just all like thick as shit.
That's okay then.
Anyway, as I was saying, then the 80s happened, and things changed. So Holly's just kind of actually had just nutshelled kind of like the next section in a one-er. So let's move on to Halloween for each of us. How was Halloween for you growing up, Mark?
Well, as I grew up in the 60s and 70s, Halloween was pretty much non-existent for me. It just wasn't celebrated in the UK. I mean, I was aware of it. I was aware of it in America through things like adverts in the back of like DC comics imports. You would see these little pages of adverts like remote-controlled ghost and X-ray glasses and stuff.
Did the ghost know?
Yeah. Well, apparently. I have no idea what they was. Probably a balloon with a light sheet over it. But as the X-ray specs were particularly disappointing because they were a feather in a bit of cardboard, and it just sort of gave a bit of a polarization.
I just remember the Bullies Kick Sand in Your Face was from the back of those.
Oh yeah,
those
Charles Atlas.
Yeah,
all of that, and Sea Monkeys. I think we've discussed these adverts before. Anyway, so I was aware of Halloween, but it just didn't feature in my childhood. Not really until the 80s, as you were saying, that we started to do things, and I was in my 20s by that point. But that's the point where I started going, no, let's just do something, because nightclubs and stuff would start having fancy dress parties. That became the big thing. Yeah, fancy dress parties, and they would draw in a load of people, and they would have prizes. Yeah, and I thought, prize money, let's do it. So I think
Did you win much?
Well, yeah, actually, I did. I did. I will send some pictures for Kit to insert at this point. But I did a prosthesis makeup on my best mate Aid, which was inspired by Jack from American Werewolf in London, with an extra eye hanging out. And it took like 3 hours to apply this full latex prosthesis on his face. And then I donned the Mythlore full demon costume, which is a big horned demon with wings and stuff. And we trotted on down to the local nightclub in Gloucester. And we won first and second prize and walked away with, I think, 250 quid.
Nice.
Yeah.
Which one of you came first?
Aid came first. But that was fine because it was still, he was still donning my gear. But yeah, so that was my first real memory of celebrating Halloween in any sense. But I wanted to, because it was an excuse to dress up as monsters and scary things, and I've always wanted to do that as a kid. But there was just, I think maybe once I did it as a kid and just got blank looks from people when you knocked on the door. Ooh, scary kid, what are you doing here? Hello. So it didn't take off. I might have tried it once, but to no success. So I really needed to be living in America if I was going to have fun on Halloween. So that was me. I've got a couple of other anecdotes, but we can come back to those.
As you wish. Holly, you can tell us more about the your experiences. Did you go around knocking on people's doors and tell them anthropological stories about how Halloween was?
No, I didn't actually. I didn't go trick or treating, I think, until I was in my sort of early 20s, and I went with I took my brothers out who were younger than me. I took my brothers out trick or treating one year when I was in my 20s. Other than that, I've never I've never been trick or treating. My mum didn't really do Halloween, um, and I also kind of grew up in a village where there were very few children overall, and so there wasn't really kind of like that Halloween vibe. Um, and also, up until I started LARPing, I had a really, really, really bad phobia of masks because I accidentally watched Michael Jackson's the opening scene of Michael Jackson's Thriller when I was very small, and it terrified me to a point where I saw anyone in a mask, I'd run away screaming.
Have you done
So
much in recent years?
for Halloween,
Mhm.
yeah, I've done a few bits and pieces. I
I
saw
was going to say you
Alice.
must have, because your sister is Chelsea, and Chelsea
Chelsea loves.
adores any time of the year where you have to put decorations up. And
She doesn't like Halloween because it gets in the way of putting Christmas decorations up in October. Um, so,
Oh dear God, no!
but we did.
Christmas decorations go up on Christmas Eve.
No, they go. If
They
you're my
come down
sister,
on
they go
Boxing
up in
Day.
October and they stay up basically until March. No, but I saw Alice Cooper on Halloween one year. That was really cool. There was a costume
oh, well,
competition for that. Um,
sorry.
which was wicked. It was very cool. And yeah, Chelsea and I used to just sort of decorate and like with
Because when I
real
used to come
pumpkins and
around
stuff.
in lockdown, like for the bits we could go around in bubbles, there were always those pumpkins that were on the.
Yeah, they were real pumpkins. They lasted for like 6 months.
They did.
They didn't seem to rot at all.
You just trip
Which
over
is
them
quite-
because they were hidden behind curtains and things. Very
yeah.
weird.
Yeah, no, I mean, I love this time of year, but I love this time of year because it's cozy and I love pumpkins, and it's kind of that whole kind of cozy autumn vibe thing rather than the scary thing. I'm not very good at scary.
Cozy's good. I mean, like, so for me, I did some bits and pieces of school. I'm remembering, I'd forgotten all about it until Mark mentioned going night clubbing. But I remember at school there were, because we didn't have prom, like many of you young people listening
I
have
had
today.
prom.
We used to have discos. I don't think that was what we had occasionally. We'd have discos. They weren't really discos. No one was like doing the whole kind of like night fever thing or on roller skates, which was, except I was on roller skates once, which was disappointing. But we had a Halloween disco, and I got to we had to make masks. But because we were doing labyrinth related stuff, I was actually capable of having I had a Crichton mask from Red Dwarf, so I could do a passable Crichton impression. So I went around as Crichton for 1 year. And the other year, next year I was a dragon, like a dragon face, and wore a suit, and had Bert.
That's cool.
Bert won, yeah. But other than that, I didn't do anything Halloween related that was what you would call traditional. Like Mark, I was aware that there were, in other countries you would go around and people would give you sweets, but that in England, if you went around asking for sweets, you'd get a clip around the ear, and that was kind of as that went down, which was disappointing.
Go
There
away,
we
you
are.
strange little child.
Oh, and you might remember in the early 80s as well that like there was I definitely did not want to go trick or treating for sweets because there were people putting razor blades in them.
What?
There was a whole thing in the early 80s where people would put razor blades in sweets and then like give them to kids.
Apparently, allegedly.
No, it was a real thing in America. It happened.
All right, not over here.
No, not over here, but like watching the news from America and going like, well, thank God that doesn't happen in this country.
Oh,
Maybe not really want to go trick or treating, huh?
That's quite terrifying.
Yes, of all the humans do terrible things to other humans. It's a commonality amongst our people.
You
Kindness
see,
is easier, but for some reason,
I always have this massive urge when it gets to Halloween to just like I know now like there are kind of unspoken rules about Halloween, right? And as a neurodivergent person, I find unspoken rules that everybody else just seems to get on with quite difficult. But I've learned that if you're going trick or treating, the house has to have like a light, like a pumpkin, like it
An
has
invitation.
to be decorated. You don't like go and knock on houses that aren't decorated.
So this is difficult. This is difficult. So I was about to go on to like, since I've had Bill, I've had a very different experience of Halloween, right? So in the last 6 years, I've gone out every year as one of the herders of the children. So it's definitely a thing. Because like, if you've got 20 kids going out in a group, because they tend to go in groups, you're going to have 4 or 5 adults. right? You're not going to have 2 adults per kid. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
Most of the adults will hang out in a house and get drunk, while
Well,
the
the
other
adult-
allocated adults were. And I'm always an allocated adult to go out because I have the best costumes. So I get to go around, often dressed in Mark's kit, and stand just away from the kids, so enough that when another parent turns around to go like, because I'll be like, "Oh, have you come down with your kid?" They'll turn around and go, "Ah!" because I'm standing 5 feet away from them in a costume, and I love it. It's grand, but you have to try and keep the kids away from any house that doesn't have a pumpkin or a light on or whatever, because they will go for any house they see. And if you're not on the ball, they're knocking on doors.
They're high on sugar and feral.
Yeah, it's exactly that. Last year it was tipping it down with rain, and like at one point I went, "Where are all the other?" And they just gone home. All the other adults just fucked off and just left me with like 20 kids and me. And I'm in like I was all right because I was in like a full LARP kit, so like I'm in a latex mask and heavy clothing, so I'm largely okay in pissing rain. But everyone else just buggered off. That was quite terrifying because they weren't my kids. And at one point I thought I might just leave them, just knock on a door. When they open it, just push them inside, and take my one home. But I didn't do that. I
no,
walked them home.
obviously.
But yeah, it's nightmare. But some of the things, the extent that people go to with their houses is incredible. There's at least 2 around here where they create whole tunnels that the kids go into one at a time, and they're full of other kids and grown-ups dressed up, and there's sound effects and there's slime and like loads of stuff's going on. And yeah, it's really quite incredible. And the last couple of years, they've had those indoor kind of light shows that show people murdering each other against window
like
frames.
behind the windows and stuff.
Yeah. So like the effort people are going to is getting really quite extreme. So it's great. It's a festival atmosphere when you're out on the streets. There's music playing. There's this stuff going on. Mark's quite right. I mean, like people are just selling tat that they're going to use once a year, then lose in their loft and have to buy again the following year.
There was that really cool, like somewhere in America, like they did like a 20-foot skeleton. Like you could just buy and it was like thousands of dollars. You could like buy it was something like that. It was somewhere like that, or like Target or something. And it was like 16 feet tall, I think. And people were just like putting them in their back, like building them all up and like putting them in their backyards and doing like TikTok videos and like Instagrams on like how they actually like levered this gigantic, because they didn't come assembled, obviously, because they're 16 feet tall. So people had to assemble these things all by themselves. And you just think like, this is it's one day.
Oh God, it's not. Truly, it's not. We went to America sort of end of September for Wasteland Weekend twice. And at the end of September, with a full month and a bit to go, so many houses were fully decorated already, like just everywhere. Everywhere you went, in all the suburbs and stuff, there would be houses fully decorated in September. And one of the great joys was going to Walmart and just going down the aisles of the Halloween stuff, going, we don't get any of this. I picked up a very nice little rat from who used to live in our live on the dashboard of our camper van. He's called Dean because he's part of the Rat Pack.
Outstanding, very good.
Yeah. But the aisles were just glorious. There was so much wonderful things for somebody like me in Walmart. You just go, oh, this is great. So it's not just one day. It's at least a month.
It's very worth pointing to that phenomenon. You're quite right, because it's like your Facebook, your Instagram feeds, as soon as it ticks over onto the 1st of October, people are putting their posts out going like, fuck September, it's Halloween time. And everyone's decorating their houses and their homes and, drink. And like I was listening to my podcast in the last 3 weeks, the adverts for pumpkin spice lattes have been on.
Oh, yes.
It's that time of year, everyone. You're like, it's not. It's fucking September, guys. Calm down.
I am that person though. Like I am that. Like as it hits October, and I'm like, great boots, big jumpers, like comfy leggings, pumpkin spice lattes. Let's go. Cozy books.
Autumn's grand. I'm with you on cozy.
Love that. And I would much prefer, like, I love when all of the Halloween stuff that comes in, because you can do things like you can buy plush little pumpkins that can sit in a fruit bowl and just look really cute. And you can get those out every year at autumn. But I don't.
You're celebrating autumn rather than Halloween?
Yeah, because I get I get too scared too easily.
Which is ironically kind of what Sam was all about.
Yes, pretty much. Yeah, yeah. But like I can't like you know like how people get those things that are like they're like figures of like witches or demons or like ghouls or whatever, and like when you walk past them they make that awful shrieking laughing noise. I'm
Those are
terrified.
children, Holly.
Oh. I'm
Babies.
terrified. I am actually terrified of children and young people in general. If I
pretty
see a group
scary.
of if I see a group of youths coming towards me, I am legitimately terrified. But like I don't have any enjoyment in being scared. And I think that now Halloween is kind of making that. When I was a kid, people used to go out of their way to like really scare people. Now I think it's just become like, I think that
Party.
kind of
It's a
fading.
party.
It's a party, right? It's become slightly, but I'm too scared of creepy things to do
You can
Halloween.
get away with it. That's what Halloween is. You can get away with scaring people. Like, Mark could put on his kit and go out and terrify people on Halloween, and everyone be like, "Oh, well, that was unnecessary." But
Well, no. Having moved into my new home, new town now, I discovered that there was a Halloween party on at the local pub. And I went, yeah, that'll be good. Oh, there's a few people who dress up. I thought, I'm not going to go over the top because it'll just look a bit weird if I just go like full me. So I toned it all down a bit. Went up to the pub, packed. Everybody in full costume. Everybody really made an effort. Going, right, okay, gloves off for that next year, which is this year. So
But I mean,
it's that excuse to have a party dressed up is just quite
you do
wonderful.
live in like the UK version of the Gilmore Girls, though.
I
Like
don't know what
if
that
you're
is.
he lives in Lilliput. That's where he lives.
Lilliput, like the people that make those figurines.
I live in Brigadoon.
Isn't that a kind of beer?
No, that's Doombar you're thinking
I'm
of.
thinking of Doom, but okay.
Also,
Brigadoon
originally
bar.
from down here.
Some of the letters are the same. No, Gilmore Girls is just. I'm not going to explain Gilmore, even though it has like huge autumn type connotations. But just like from everything that you've ever said about where you live now, that community spirit is just like so strong, and you have like all, and it's like a really creative little teeny tiny town, and you all of that kind of that like, hey, let's do like an arts festival and let's do this and let's do that. It's all kind of very embedded into the fabric of that town. So I'm
involved
surprised
in an interactive theatre thing which is happening, raising money for the social club in town, and they're doing haunted waxworks. So I've been making ghosts, and I made a large lobster for it. Don't ask me why there's a large lobster in the haunted wax.
Is it a lawyer?
No. Lobster lawyer?
Yeah, lobster lawyers are a thing.
No, okay, it's not one of those. Severed heads and a ghost dog and stuff. So I'm getting to make spooky stuff for the community. It's lovely.
That's really cool.
This is an important fact, I think, because one of the big changes that I've definitely noticed from when I was a kid to now is that there is so much pride in how Halloween is presented by people, and how it's celebrated. There's a really deep sense of kind of like achievement in getting your house just right, or how amazed people look when they look at your costume, or they come around to your house to get sweets, whatever. There's so much pride in what's done. And when 20 years ago, 25 years ago, there wasn't so much that. It was just kind of like people come around and go like, yeah, I'm wearing a toilet roll on my head. I'm a mummy. Give me some food. But it's really moved on, and it's starting to get that kind of, again, when you're out with the kids, it's starting to get that kind of carnival atmosphere going on around the streets, which is exciting.
Do you think it's because people have ultimately become more accepting of things that are weird? Because like, if you look back sort of like when I was a kid, like
the geek factor,
it's the geek factor, but it's also things like the goth factor, like, October is it though?
Yeah.
Are all goths geeks, but not all geeks
I think
are goths?
the concept of celebrating things like goth and the concept of collecting postcards aren't that two different, really.
Yeah, I guess
that whole geekdom, the thing that makes you unusual or like different or whatever, that's the geekdom. It's
okay.
It's where we live.
Like because Halloween is Gothmas, isn't it? Like that's another. It's when all
Gothmas is. Well,
you
no,
know.
I think people celebrate Gothmas at Halloween because you celebrate cozy pumpkin spice lattes
Yeah,
while
but
they're
I
celebrating
also,
Gothmas.
but
But I guarantee you a lot of Gothmas people like spicy
I,
pumpkin.
I also celebrate Gothmas in like
Oh,
you
as
know,
does Mark.
for my for
Whenever
my
possible.
youth.
See, when I lived in Cardiff, I had a big group of friends there, and they would always go, "Oh, Mark, can you dress us up for Halloween?" So
Did they sound like that?
yeah, of all the ones who didn't sound quite so Welsh, they'd all come round, and I'd spend bloody hours making them all up individually. And one year, about 8 or 9 people came round and get them all into costume. We all went down the nightclub, walked in, went, "Oh God, you should have been here half an hour ago. They did the judging, you'd have won." And fuck, because I spent so long doing these people up. And the other one year, one of them brought his son round to me. He said, "Oh, he wants to be made up as a zombie. Can you make him up as a zombie?" I don't know how old he was. He was maybe like 7. So, okay, sat him down in the chair and painted his face up. And apparently got home, looked in the mirror, burst into tears. And I had to wipe it all off because he was scared of it. So,
See, that would be me. That would absolutely be me. Like
Terrifying small children.
no, as in being terrified of my own reflection. But
Ah.
it's that because the celebration of like the things that are like a little bit macabre is a huge thing now. Like it's not just in October, not just Halloween, but like all year round, right? So like there's this really 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 cool person that I follow on YouTube called Bailey Sarian, and she does this whole really cool thing where she puts her makeup on. So like the visual is like her like getting ready and putting her makeup on and doing like these really cool like looks and stuff. But as she's doing it, she's like talking like she's like recounting like true crime stories or like folklore stories or like big sort of like murder mystery type things. And she's just kind of telling the story as she's putting her makeup on. And I think like having that kind of freedom of like the freedom of expression that social media gives you has really helped to turn like to kind of create that sort of bigger atmosphere around things that are a little bit dark, a little bit Kat Von D, even though we don't
Maybe
talk about Kat Von D anymore.
I was going to go down Mark's route, to be honest, again, and just say it's commercialization. Like, people have latched onto the idea they can make a lot of money out of Halloween and spent years building up into something that they can sell to everyone.
and it's
Not
important
bad
American traditions in as well, and Hollywood and American culture seeps into, especially UK culture. Those things seep in, and the commercialization gets adopted because hey, you can make a shitload of money by people selling people Frankenstein masks and little plush pumpkins.
Yeah. It's not to say that the mutually exclusive. I think like
No,
the commercialization has definitely driven the ability for it to be out there, and then for people like you're talking about, Holly, to like actually then embrace it and turn it into something much more beautiful than it could have been.
I just like the fact that there is a wholesome layer
Yeah.
to what is essentially, you're right, absolute complete capitalism. And I'm the first person to buy the little plushy pumpkins.
That's okay.
So
That's okay. Well, we're not bashing it. I don't think. I think it's driven more by a.
Within the whole span of the year, when else do we get the opportunity and the excuse to dress up and go out in public? We don't really. There are no other celebrations which go, hey, we don't have like a Mardi Gras or anything.
I wish we had Mardi Gras.
Yeah, or Day of the Dead. That would be
not one that encompasses the whole country for sure. Definitely, like we have localized ones, don't we, in different like places, but we don't have one that the whole country can.
And Mary Boyd and stuff like that. But
I think that's why, like, again, like aside from Halloween, is why Pride is becoming like it's just so important, and so obviously it's very important anyway, but so important and so big because it is that thing that just kind of brings loads of different subsections of the community together for a great big party.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't have carnival. We don't
drenched in kindness rather than like
Yeah, absolutely. We don't have Mardi Gras. We don't have big parades. We don't have the Super Bowl, which
But
has
Halloween
become some kind
is
of religion all on its own.
I think it's generally drenched in kindness as well. But you're right. I mean, like, it's when I was in my between years between, not doing anything Halloween and having Bill, we'd do stuff like that was LARPing or role playing related, right? We'd do like a special Cthulhu game or a special Ravenloft game or write a special LARP around Halloween time. And in fact, the ROC LARPs that we did that were horror based were like so good that everyone wanted to be at them except Holly, who hates horror. But they would become a celebrated thing in themselves. But they were kind of like niche, I had my friends over. I didn't do anything else. But now I go, like, we hire a hall out and we have loads of different role playing games going, loads of one shots that are specifically written for like Halloween, that kind of thing. It's bigger, it's better, it's faster, it's sexier, it's just fun for everyone to be involved in. It's quite glorious, really. On that note, we having talked somehow for well over an hour. By well over an hour, I mean like a minute over an hour. We should probably like wind this episode down a bit, unless you've got anything you want to add particularly. We can just stick that bit that Holly said earlier on the end now.
I'm so sorry I ruined it. I got carried away.
I didn't say you ruined it. I just said you put the end in the middle, which is fine. We've been doing things like that our entire lives, not only just as ourselves, but as a culture. So, I think you're okay.
Thank you.
Mark, you got anything you want to throw in? Or are you happy?
Well, that's pretty much all my anecdotes, really. So me and Halloween haven't had as much fun as we should have.
Jinkies.
No, but we can do it now, and that's the most important thing.
That's it, though, isn't it? Like, it's not just for kids anymore either. Like, it used to feel like it was just for kids. Like, kids go trick-or-treating, or like uni students have big parties, and like everyone else just like, you stay home with the lights off if you don't want anyone to know you're in, or with your pumpkin at the front door if you've got a bowl of sweets to give out to kids. But now there's stuff for grown-ups to do too. It's great.
Yeah. And the point of like now, when I said I can do it now, there was a whole Now That's Halloween albums as well. There you go.
No way.
The Monster Mash. I used to love it. I was working in the lab late one night.
There you go. And on that note, that is us for today, beautiful people. We hope that you enjoyed the beginnings of our strange journey into the terror/fun-filled world of sound, as it was then and is now. And if I'm pronouncing it wrong, please do tell me. I'm pretty sure I'm not, though. There's a lot more to it than we realise. We would like to dig deeper, but we're going to talk more in the next episode about ways that we explore Halloween and celebrate Halloween through film, books, those kind of things, and how they've changed alongside the changing traditions of Halloween itself down through the years. So if you want to delve deep with your long, terrifying fingers into our geeky trousers that we put on to cover our shameful normality at this time of year, please join us next week. What now? What have I done this time?
Where do we start?
And it's goodbye from Stephen.
About an hour ago. Anyway,
wrap it up, Stephen.
I'm trying. You're not making it easy. What? Anyway, as I was saying, thank you for listening to our rambling thoughts about Margaret. We'll be back again next week with more tales. So it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from me.
And it's still goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from Margaret.
Margaret. Good luck to all who sail in you.
Have an amazing week, people. We love you very much. Take care of each other. Music. You have been listening to A Geek Tragedy with me, Plague Mantle, and my best friend, the excellent Holly Properly, and our actually famous guy, Mark Caldery. If you like this, there is plenty more at patreon.com/A Geek Tragedy. Production is by Kit Brutnell. Our logo and artwork is by markcaldery.com. Music is by Borislaw Kozielski. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook at A Geek Tragedy. Email us at ageektragedypodcast@gmail.com. Subscribe, leave us a rating and a review. And don't forget to tell all your geeky friends. Also, a big shout out to all of our genius geeks. We adore each and every one of you. And of course, much love. Take care of each other.